Here we are. Welcome back. The first one to kick off 2022. We have episode 8 of the Elevate Cleveland podcast. Chris, it's good to see you again. How are you today?
Good to see you too, bro. I just saw you yesterday, though.
Yeah, no, and 5 minutes ago. And our viewers don't know that, so nonetheless, we got to give him the introduction. We got a great introduction we have to give to this awesome man, Mr. Jason Therrien, the owner, CEO, founder of Thundertech. Started out of the college dorm room, actually, same alma mater. We went to John Carroll together, John Carroll University. Shout out Blue Streaks, right? That's right.
Must be greatness there,
Awesome.
I guess. Same dorm. Right, what was the dorm called again?
Malore is when you started in.
Malore.
Yeah. So for all of our John Carroll, Cleveland local people who are listening, all the alum, Malore, the soft room, dorm room, that's where the business was started, right? So you could do it as well. So, Jason, thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. So, Jason, if you can, just first and foremost, introduce yourself, though we just gave the name and the company that you have founded, but give a little introduction for yourself. Let us know who it is you are, our viewers, and what it is you do.
Sure. Well, like you said, Jason Therrien. Am a proud Blue Streak alum.
Yes, sir.
But I guess bigger than that, I've got 2 great kids. Wife I've been married to for going on almost 20 years now. I lead a very blessed life. Part of that is the business, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, called Thundertech, that I did start 23 years ago now. Actually, it's the first time been able to say 23 since we just put January as a start date. Since I don't remember when the hell the month was, but I remember the year. It was 99. So yeah, and then that's allowed me to get into a lot of other businesses and investments and other partnerships and real estate, et cetera. So amazing. Yeah, I still like to keep my hands very busy, and that's allowed me to get into a lot of things. And Cleveland's home, but we have offices in Detroit and Chicago. We do a lot in the Midwest, especially the Great Lakes. But we're really coast to coast. Last year we did work in 26 states, and then I think it's still strangely enough, but we're doing a lot of overseas. So
really,
yeah, we've got actually just took an email in the parking lot before I walked in. A very sizable consulting firm in Australia, which I didn't know.
That's gotta be exciting.
It is interesting
awesome.
Looking about all these time zones, and then a team I overheard this morning on a conference call with. Parts of Europe, and it's so fascinating. The world's gotten so flat. So there's still, I guess my point is, there's still stuff like that gets me up every day, go to work, makes me intrigued even after all these years. And I got a ton of great people, both internally with my team and clients that we get to work with and, kind of invent that future every day with.
That's right.
And
That's
can you
amazing.
explain, so obviously Dominic and I have done our research and everything, but for anyone who's watching, what is Thundertech? What do you guys do? And just kind of go from there.
Sure. So Thundertech is a digital-first integrated marketing agency. So what the hell is that?
Yeah, sure.
Really what that means is, 20-some years ago, we started off building websites, and that was really early. I mean, that was dial-up, right?
Oh, yeah.
We found, and my background is more general business and marketing, so we found clients had a lot of other needs. So we came in and started offering to do their advertising and print collateral and messaging, and that just basically grown over the years. So integrated marketing, the way Thundertech defines it, is that we have all these skill sets in-house. The nice thing is that our head count, so our overhead, is about even between all these different skill sets. So when a client comes to us, we can approach their problem or their opportunity with a wholly integrated, kind of holistic approach, and not have to push one service or another, because that's really where our overhead is. And that's where a lot of people in my industry, they have to do that. They have to sell the advertising because that's all they know, or that's where 90% of their cost is. I don't care where you start, and that's what keeps clients around with us. So that's been part of our secret sauce too.
So, Chris, remind our viewers again who it is we are and what we do.
Hey guys, both Dominic and I are loan officers here at Liberty Home Mortgage. So if you or anyone you know is looking to purchase or refinance a home, please email us at the elevateclepodcast@gmail.com. Subject line, looking to purchase or refinance a home. The email's in the description.
So was it, did you become the one-stop shop because of you noticing that clients were asking for further services? I picture a window washing business, and you go up to the house and you're washing the windows, and the owner comes out and says, hey, do you guys do gutters as well? Was it that for you, or was it I have a passion for all this stuff, let me make a one-stop shop business, or was it more so client need?
That's a good question. I think it started off with our curiosity and client need. So I find a lot of things interesting. I find all of our services interesting. I was dangerous enough very early on to do a little bit of some of these things. But really just ask clients the questions, what they needed next. Because everybody has windows, probably has a gutter, right? And maybe the timing's not right to replace that gutter, but maybe it is. Why wouldn't we just stay on site and replace the gutter too while we're there washing the windows?
Is that how Thundertech started then? From the very beginning, or did you kind of evolve as the time passed?
It was not the first year or two, but it was very quickly thereafter.
Yeah.
We just looked through a wider lens than a lot of our peers did.
Gotcha.
So take us back to the dorm room. Like, what did this? Was it a spark idea? Was it, hey, I could freelance and help people build some websites, web design, and then it just kind of developed? Take us back to the dorm room, the mindset there, and were you even trying to be a business owner, entrepreneur?
So many details of those dorm rooms I won't need to share. I think, what really happened was I just got sick of watching reruns with my roommates. It's like, shouldn't we be doing something else? So. I studied my butt off in college. I played sports. I had great internships. I picked up part-time jobs. I just kept active and had more fun than I would admit to my parents, even at this age. But I just stayed busy, and that created more opportunities. So I had some great internships. I had some great summer jobs where I just raised my hand for things, and they happened to be related to a lot of what we're doing today in marketing and in digital and advertising. And then from there, word of mouth spread. So a referral would come in, and I'd say, absolutely, I have time to do it. I didn't have time to do it, but I figured it out, and there was money on the table, especially, somebody in college is like, that's a great, weekend, let alone maybe spring break, let alone maybe a car payment or something. So you just kept going, and it was intoxicating, frankly, to like have this. And then each referral would start creating other referrals, and then you'd go back and sell the additional service. So you had a bunch of clients, and then again, I'd check in after we finished the work. So this flywheel kind of started up back then, and it was really fascinating.
And we had John DeJulius. I don't know if you've seen John DeJulius or know of John DeJulius, and a lot of what he talks about is that repeat customer business, that customer retention. Would you say the majority of your current customers are all retained customers? Yeah. So talk about that customer experience then, because if you are able to keep such a high retention rate with your customers, what are you doing differently than competition?
So one of the things, and again, I got lucky with a lot of things, right?
For sure. But the harder you work, right? The harder you work, the luckier you get.
There you go. I do believe in that. I didn't understand a lot what was going on in my industry while I was getting into it, because I didn't have the background. I worked for brands, or I worked as an intern or whatever, odd jobs. Before I started actually selling into a lot of these companies. So I never worked at an agency. Well, this was, especially in the early 2000s, was really when the madmen were running for the door. They had aged out. The model was really starting to fall down. And it took longer than kind of everyone thought. But, nothing changes overnight, right? So we just watched it. We said, some of this works. Let's just copy it. A lot of this doesn't. Like, let's make up the rules before somebody else does. One of the areas that I thought was incredibly misunderstood or just not practiced was, like John DeJulius, the art of customer service.
Sure.
And I didn't understand it, coming from a professional services background. I was like, why aren't more places holding on to their clients and treating them well, because that's their business? They thought they were in the business of providing X, not necessarily service. And like some clients, the service is more important, or at least as important as your actual deliverable.
Yes.
So it's not rocket science. So we just took care of clients for a long time really well. And it was sad and fascinating at the same time how fast you stood out because of that. And it's not the easiest thing. We've all been in restaurants or wherever that, you're like, why isn't that person nicer to us, or why aren't you paying attention, right? And to many people, it's like, that doesn't make sense. And just maybe people aren't wired for whatever, but we honed in on that as a practice and frankly as a guiding principle. We have 4 guiding principles, and trained for it, hired people that were wired for it, and celebrated it. And again, I don't think it's quite rocket science, but that absolutely helped client retention.
Pinnacle. What are those 4 guiding principles?
Oh, did I tee that up for you?
No.
So here they are. Great work, right? You got to produce great work in whatever field you're in, and we have a lot of different fields we're in, between web and heavy digital work to PR and communications, advertising, et cetera. But you've got to do great work, and that's table stakes, frankly, at the size we're at now. If you're not doing great work, right, you're going to the back of the line. Mm-hmm. But then you got to follow that up with great customer service.
Okay.
Right, and if you can provide that create a raving fan out of that client, you're going to be more likely to have a client for life. We have some clients that we are now with them on their 5th employer.
Really?
Because they've been with us for 15 years or longer, right? And then many of those we keep even after they leave.
Yeah.
So it's a net gain every time, which is a beautiful thing. So great work, raving fan style customer service. Education is a big piece of what we do, because so much is changing in our world. I mean, we talked about 20 years ago, we were working on dial-up websites.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then mobile came around. Like, mobile blew people's minds for years, Like, we take it for granted today, but it took a while. It's the same thing right now happening with social and TikTok and Amazon and everything else. Like, that's scaring a lot of businesses. But if we can educate them, right, we build their trust. And then the last one is innovation, right? And it kind of goes along with our evolution, is that we've got to keep innovating, keep trying new things in all those service areas, as well as helping our clients innovate for the future. So those are the quick 4.
So you talk a lot about just the experience that the customer has. So do you hold your employees at a pretty high standard then for that? I mean, I imagine you putting such an emphasis on customer service, your employees an extension of you, extension of your company. I would imagine you would hold them to a higher expectation because you want that customer retention.
Yeah, 100%. So it took years to get there, and we would just hire good people, and they usually took care of folks. But after we kind of tipped the scales getting to a certain size, we realized we need to train against it. We need to measure against it. We need to put systems in that even on their worst day, they're still providing an acceptable level of service. And that's made the biggest difference, because people, if you tell them how to do it and they're already attuned to maybe as the type of person they are, and you put the systems in there to support it, they will flourish. But if you leave them out there on their own, everyone's going to have a bad day. And some people have more than,
So
bad
say
days
we all,
often,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it then is that reflection of you. And another thing we did differently, in terms of all this, was we didn't hire prima donnas. So I didn't, there were some great folks that came through our spot, and they could absolutely do whatever their skill set was at a, all-star level, but they were jerks.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I don't need you, right? We're
Cancerous almost.
Absolutely, but we're a team element. And that's the kind of thing, it's like that can work short term in any business, especially in the creative field, but long term it eats away.
Even like just because I've been doing sports my whole life,
Yeah.
even in sports, like at least for in wrestling, like you could have a stellar athlete on your wrestling team, right? But as weird as it is, wrestling's not necessarily an individual sport because you're surrounded by your teammates so much. So many a time, like in high school and college, even though you were like such a good wrestler, an individual, if you had a bad attitude or you're mouthing off or you're not doing the workouts, you're not doing the right things, you could be very talented at the same time, but it's cancerous to the rest of the team. You know what I mean? So I get it. Sometimes you do like, hey, we have this all-star that can come on, but hey, we interview them. It's a shitty interview and they're not doing so hot. Like, I don't want them, I mean, we've had mortgage people like that too before as well. And, we're not really that, we don't really want to retain that kind of person,
Yeah, I mean, like as you guys are saying that, like in my head, I'm almost thinking that I'd rather have, I'd almost rather have like two batters hitting like 275, 300 versus the guy who's hitting 500, 550, but he's a cancer to the team. You know what I'm saying? Because ultimately, like you said, it is going to trickle down. And what is that creating for other employees? What are they implanting in their head that then kind of pins them against management or even the process of what it is the company does or the market? Because you have to have those specific things. You have to have that around you, like kind of like what Luptac thinks or says to us as well. You have to have a positive outlook on your market as well. Well, if you have somebody coming in that's saying, oh, well, the tides are turning, nobody's going to be buying houses this year, that's going to impact the fact that you have all these leads coming in, for example, with us, and then what does that do as it trickles down and becomes a cancer? And now the other guys are saying, well, screw it, then we shouldn't just call these leads. You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't put as much effort in.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think also too, like we even saw as we were doing some research on your company and yourself, like it's obvious you create an awesome employee experience at your company as well, right? No cubicles. You're all about collaboration.
Yeah.
Our CEO kind of, models it off of Richard Branson, the creator of Virgin Airlines, who says like it's about the employee experience, right? You take care of your employees, they'll then take care of your customers. I gotta imagine that there's some level of that with you, if not a very high level of it, just because of the fact that you simply say like, hey, we're not gonna hire prima donnas. We wanna hire people who are gonna be good for our entire culture, because it's not just, hey, let me train you on how to have good customer experience. It's let me create an environment where you come in and you're happy and you feel like this is actually a release for you versus your outside life. And then in turn, you're gonna wanna be happy with the people that you speak to. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, you got it. You got it. I knew you were going to bring up wrestling too. So, all right, well, ding on that. I love it. Yeah, and I think you mentioned baseball, so let's use that for a second, right? That can buy you a World Series. There's plenty of teams, right, that have done that, but there's very few dynasties that actually happen as a result of that. So I'm with you. I'd rather bet on those folks hitting 275 or 290, whatever it is, versus the guy hitting 500. But right, how do you get there? And I think it's, we had a lot of really great practices in place, and 2 years ago, we had them all tested. How do these work remotely for us? And we've gone through quite a metamorphosis. I mean, enormously. And I would say the management team, including myself, has gotten really good at getting uncomfortable quick. Like, how do we stay ahead of this? Because, man, there's a lot of change happening, as everybody knows right now, in the labor market and the markets we serve, in the industries we serve, but also the services that we sell. There's just so much change that's happening quicker and quicker. So we've just pushed ahead and made sure the folks we have understand where we're going, but understand they got to stay on their toes, and you got to be comfortable with it. At the same time, you still have the same culture that will catch you if you trip. Right? We'll clean it up. We'll get you back on your way. But if you are stuttering to try because you're worried about tripping, that from day one has never been our culture. We're not the right fit for you. So we've stayed very entrepreneurial because of that. Long leashes. We always talk about we can always pull a rope, but you can't push it. So we'll pull you back from the edge. You go too far. But if you're not willing to even peek out there, I can't push a rope.
Yeah.
So
it's a good analogy.
Yeah, a lot of that we use with our recruiting, with our training, and you guys mentioned the tour before. We do a lot of promotion from within as well. So it's also training managers, right? Somebody that started at a certain level and now moving up, right? There's still training that has to go into there. They have to be able to teach those things now. They've listened to them and maybe activated them, but now they have to have that trust and a lot of people under them.
So could you give an example for that, like a tangible example of like you can't push the rope, but you could pull, you could pull it. So like for your employees, where are you allowing that leash to kind of travel out a little bit further than what they might even expect starting at a new position, to where you're allowed to say like, hey, go out, like go try, go put yourself out there and try. Like what's a hard set example for your specific industry and company?
There's a lot. And I think it depends on where they came from or what they're used to. And we have had some very interesting stories over the years where folks came to us like 6 months after they're hired, like, it sounded good, but I didn't believe you.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, but now you believe me, right? Yeah. It's like you did the thing.
As far as the openness to put their own creativity into projects?
Right.
Okay.
So like a simple thing we think of service is not waiting for the client to ask for ideas or opinions or options, put them out there throughout the relationships. Well, a lot of agencies, especially kind of traditional agencies, wait till the end of the year and then go through the pitch review. So they bring the deck and it's the shiny picture and they're like, here's what we want to do next year. Why in the hell would you wait 365 days, especially right now when things change so quickly? But that was the way it worked. It worked because you set the plan and very little changed throughout the year, and then you redid the plan the next year. For us, it's like, you should set a plan, but there's so much fluidity in the world and in accounts today. Keep bringing ideas to the table, right? And that imagination, creativity is a muscle. So the more they're using it, it's like so going back to baseball, we talk about it. Like, if you get 3 out of your 10 ideas taken up, you're
Hall
going
of
to make
Fame.
Absolutely, man.
10 get you in the Hall of Fame.
And they're like, most people are like, oh, I just thought about the 7 that I got shot down on. So we use that baseball analogy a lot because most people, even if they're not a sports fan, can understand like how batting average works, right? 3 out of 10 is all-star or Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But like, you can do that in our industry because if somebody takes you up on every idea, then you're not pushing them far enough, right? Come up with crazier and crazier and crazier ideas that, there should be a business reason behind it, but you need to do it. We've gotten clients into brand new channels. Like years ago when Amazon was much, much smaller, we saw clients who were missing the boat on that as a channel. We said, you've got to get here. We'll show you how to do it. We paint the picture for them. And most of them got shot down. But 1, 2, 3 years later, they come back to like, hey, let's talk about that thing.
Yeah.
We're ready now. Or we believe it now because I see all these,
Planted the seed.
all these cardboard boxes at home now. Somebody must be using it, right?
Exactly.
Right? So there's stuff like that where it's just like, go out and do it. Just because they say no doesn't mean it's a failure. It just may not, the timing, like in that case, may not be right.
So do you have any specific examples of people in your company where maybe they came in, they were a little bit hesitant about actually like understanding the fact that you really meant, hey, you have the free reign to kind of do this and that and go out there and kind of try it, and then all of a sudden that sparked it within them. They did end up going out there. They kind of fell on their face, or they went out there and put out some new ideas. And now all of a sudden, now that's integrated in the company. That's a part of the model. Or those people are now promoted within, and they're the vice president, the manager of a department, et cetera.
Yes. So it's a great way to figure out if somebody has that drive and that ambition, and possibly could be put into a leadership position. Because they have an idea, do they want to champion it and step out of their comfort zone to do something either slightly off center from what they're doing or completely different. So like, for example, we have a couple of folks that we found out years ago were really talented in multimedia and 3D design. We weren't offering 3D design. That's stuff like product developers or architects would use, right? But like, do you guys want to try this out? And then sure enough, an opportunity falls out of the sky, and we're like, well, let's look at it. But if they hadn't raised their hand, we wouldn't have said yes to it. And they failed miserably on the first couple because we didn't know how to quote them. They weren't doing them day to day. It was something on the side that they were.
You tried it.
We tried it.
Yeah.
And now that's one of the fastest growing areas in our business.
Yeah, exactly.
No kidding.
2 folks dedicated to it now.
No kidding.
Because we trialed it long enough. We figured out what we were good at and also what we needed to stay away from. And then as the pandemic hit, there weren't as many trade shows. There were no trade shows for a while. Well, clients needed to show their product off. So I needed to show you how this thing worked. But I couldn't show you in person in 2020. And then I couldn't bring 1,000 people to my trade show booth to show them. But I could design it and have it come apart in a 3D model and have you click on it, spin it around, all that.
Yeah.
And now it's just booming, right?
That's incredible.
That person and some of their reports now would never have gotten there had they not raised their hand and had we not also been willing to let them fail a few times to figure this thing out. And we've got a few teams in a couple different departments that also follow that line. I mean, a couple of years ago, somebody on social saying this TikTok thing is interesting. Like, what is this? A couple of years ago, no one had heard of it. Sure enough, again, step by step, and now all of a sudden it's in there as an offering, and so it just on and on and on. You got to let people fail to sometimes see what we can do.
So you just have multiple employees that are just constantly looking at different trends and just presenting you with different things all the time, right? I imagine like is that a daily thing, or is that more of like a weekly thing?
It's not quite daily.
So like, hey Jason, I got this idea. I really want to explain it. You got 5 minutes?
You know what the best ones are that I don't even hear about them.
Really? Okay.
And sometimes I'll see maybe once it's done, or sometimes I'll see it months after it's done, which drives me crazy. But, that's how it's supposed to work now. Their managers enable them, or their managers' see it happening. And eventually I hear about it. But we'll never scale if I got to have my pulse on everything, right? So that makes me feel good that we've built a true culture where it's not just my decision. it's now the culture that managers feel, various levels of leadership feel empowered to let their folks do that.
That's huge. That being able to trust your right hand man is awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of other companies maybe do more so, I guess, like corporate America. You have more bureaucracy with that kind of stuff, where it's more like, hey, I have an idea, but now I got to go through layers and layers of different things. Sometimes it's like I got to fill out 7 sheets of paper just to come up with a name. You know what I mean?
And all you hear is, we appreciate, we took it into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Take us through that. So, like, what was it? Because it sounds, and we've had on some younger, you're how old now?
Ooh, 42.
42.
Yeah.
We've had on entrepreneurs who are our age, 26, 27, 28. And one of the big things that they're facing right now, Jason, is in order to scale, I have to kind of take my hands out and trust people a little bit more and focus
delegate,
on what I'm good at, right? Delegating. Take us through that for you with your experience in scaling your business. Did you face some level of that fear with letting go, or was that something that was always easy for you? And where does that leave you now with how much involvement you have, and what are you focusing on that now is allowing your company to be in Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, some of the biggest cities in the Midwest, and continuously expanding?
Yeah, I think it's a big problem with a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, and because if you let go too much, right, things can go out of control, and you don't want that. But if you don't let go at all, it's just so tough to scale when that founder is the hub. And I never want, and that was something I was lucky because some of the experience I had growing up, and certainly while I was in school, and then even when I got the company off the ground, I got to go into our clients' businesses and learn them. And it was good and bad learnings.
Yeah.
It was like, well, that's interesting. I'm absolutely going to take that back. Or it was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to touch that. What are they doing here? But they didn't hire me to fix that. So I'll just take a note and, go back. But yeah, it's a tough thing. That's why I think a lot of people don't or can't do it. But again, don't lie to yourself. If you want to scale, you got to get out of your own way. If you're not interested in scaling, well, then that's fine. Then take all the control. So it's letting that leash out enough in measured bits, I guess, that you can start to also reassure yourself to say, yeah, we're going to be okay.
Exactly.
Literally, it's the dumbest thing, but I loved it. I still do, but I love checking the mail. Yeah. It was a way to keep a pulse on who's paying, what kind of correspondence are we getting, who's marketing to us. It was like, over a time, this is not a great use of my time. Yeah. So every once in a while I'll thumb through it when I see it on, our office manager's desk. But it's like, but I still know founders who, that's part of their job. And again, it's a very small example, but that's a waste of time. So I keep challenging myself, and it's pretty much now an annual challenge. What do I need to stop doing? Because it's really easy to say what I need to start doing. Yeah. Or what I need to do more of, or what I need to change. But it's what do you actually need to stop doing? And that, I think, for any business person, entrepreneur or not, is a great exercise to go through. Because you want to get uncomfortable, stop doing something, even if you're good at it. Yeah. Right? Stop doing it.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube short the other day, and it was with Jack Ma. You know Jack Ma? Alibaba?
Yes.
Okay. And he was talking pretty kind of similar to what you were saying, listen, I'm not my background was not in technology. My background was in business. How I was able to create Alibaba to such heights and scale it so high was I was able to just get a lot of smart people together in the same room and he was able to delegate, and he gave a vision and delegation and was able to scale from there. So I think it's kind of like the same story. Hey, all you're doing as a leader, as an entrepreneur, is you have the vision, you convey the vision to a bunch of other smart people who are able to help you get there. And a part of that is just, hey, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to give this smart person? And what is this smart person good at? Because very well, they're probably going to be better at than you are. You know what I mean? Yeah. So in kind of the same context. So that's pretty cool. You kind of just you see different correlations between entrepreneurs, same stories. We've
with our management, even with ourselves, we've used this 80% rule. That can the person that you're giving something to do it? And again, part of that's process, right? Do you have some process and systems and policies around what you're talking about? Can they do it at least 80% as well as you?
Okay.
Because that 20% either won't matter because it's still an 80%, or it might be better. That 20% might be better, or the 20% might be the same as you. But if you can look at that 80%, because you know what, 20% you can clean up real quick, right? And you can train, or maybe it doesn't. That 20% doesn't even matter as much as you thought it did. So that, to a lot of younger managers that I've talked to and also employed over the years, like that seems to be comforting. Like I don't have to just give it up and like close my eyes. I can say, okay, 80%. I can sleep on 80%.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's some have a hard time because they're sticklers. But it's like, you know, you can clean up the rest.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they don't kill anybody, we can pretty much clean it up.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, going back to 1999 and the early 2000s, who was, since we're talking about scaling, who were the first couple people that you ended up hiring? And talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of my first hires was somebody that did some freelance for me, actually, while we were in school together. And she was moonlighting, essentially, working off hours at Thundertech once I got a space. And she had a day job. And then one day showed up, said she had quit. And it was news to me because I wasn't ready to bring her on full time. So we figured it out. And you know, she was a great first employee. She helped, very importantly, hire our second employee, who is still with us, Bruce Williams. So Bruce is celebrating 20 years this year.
Nice.
And and he is a VP now and part of the executive committee. And I use him, and there's several others. I'm very blessed. We have a lot of folks that work their way up. But I use them as an example to folks we hire to say, what do all these folks have in common? And the answer is not tenure. It's that they created their own path. For him to, you know, start as employee 2, you know, third after myself. Yeah, A, it was risky, but B, like, none of the other stuff existed as it exists today.
Yeah.
Structure wasn't there, policies, systems, clearly all these other people weren't there. So his skill set had to keep changing. He had to keep rising to the occasion. He didn't get promoted at the many promotions he's gone through, and some of these other folks I mentioned. They don't get it just because of longevity. Now, there's some places that will reward loyalty, and I think that's a fading element. But I think there's something to be said to say, all right, they can be, but they're also pushing themselves. And Thundertech is incredibly lucky to have a bunch of those folks. But I think that also attracts people to us, you know, is that Bruce's second in command started with us as an intern.
Oh, yeah.
He's been with us 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the guy's incredible. I mean, absolutely.
In an interview process, you're using him as an example to like, hey, listen, this could be you in a couple years? Or
yeah, I think, you know, I they don't let me in the interviews anymore. I get to help hire senior level folks, but that was another thing I had to give up. Like, I need to step out of these because we have an HR team, you know, the department heads and the team leaders should be picking their people. I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, I'll poke my nose in, but I'm not involved in that. It was very weird for a while, but then it's like, well, this works really well.
Yeah.
Get me out of there. Yeah. Right. Senior level folks, I need to have more say in.
Yeah.
But we still have a process before it gets to me.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Chris, we use that on an onboarding to just, you know, certainly it might come up during the interview process, but once they're there, we really want them to understand as proof, I guess, to your point earlier about if you don't want to believe me, go ask one of these people that went out to the edge and they didn't fall. You know, and that's, I think, important in any culture. Is you've got to, it's all hollow until they experience it. You got to point to others or stories or real life things. And not stuff from 10, 20 years ago. Like, you got to point to something recently to say it. And it's amazing. And again, a lot of water cooler stuff pre-pandemic and lunchroom stuff. You'd walk by, you're like, oh, just ask them about that story.
Yeah.
You know, and you just plant the seed and you see what happens. So, yeah, it's just human nature. It takes some time to buy in sometimes.
Like what I think about when you're explaining that is I think people's understanding of one of the aspects of how money works and how you get paid. Most people say, oh, I make $20 an hour. No, you don't. You get paid for the value that you add in that hour. Because if you made $20 an hour, you could just sit home, you'd work at a mint, right? The money just makes itself. You're paid for the value that in proportion, direct proportion to the value that you add to that company within that hour. If you add more value, AKA put yourself out there, come up with a new model, or I guarantee if somebody came to you, no matter what position or level, and gave some new breathtaking idea that helped explode the business an extra $3 to $5 million a year in revenue, you'd pay them in like proportion to that or promote them to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're paid on that value. So when you understand that and realize like, oh, okay, if I put myself out there and actually put this idea out there, maybe the 7 of the 10 don't land with my team manager and my team lead, but maybe 2 or 3 of the 10 get back to the team lead and then get to Jason, and all of a sudden we're incorporating it, and now that's one of the arms of our business. That person's going to be paid in like proportion to that.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that like you are paid in direct proportion to the value that you add to your company. Thus why the CEO of Disney will make X amount of dollars in 1 year, because it's chump change compared to what it is he's helping the actual company produce. All around.
And I think that your business model does really well when you don't have so much bureaucracy to be able to say like, hey, I have an idea. It's not going to get, put under the table. It's going to, we're going to get some attention. It may not be the best idea, but hey, in aggregate, there may be a ton of different ideas. And again, maybe 3 out of the 10 work. Those 3 out of 10 make you a couple $1 million a year. It certainly helps. You know what I mean? That's what I love about America, to be honest.
There was, I'm forgetting if it was Marcus or Luptak who spoke to us. It was back at the old office, like towards the end of 19, and they were talking about one of the aspects of what makes a company so great, and it's, I forget the exact word, but it's people's sense that they are allowed to approach their upper management and not receive backlash or feel like their thoughts were not just pushed off to the side.
Psychological safety.
Yeah. That might have literally been it. Exactly. It was done by like Apple or something. There was some study done or something like that where they figured out that it was psychological safety. That's literally it. Where it was, do I feel as though I could go to Jason and give an idea for how we should operate something in the sales room where we're deficient? And is Jason receptive to it, or is he like, okay, we'll talk about it? You know what I'm saying? Where to that person, they're like, oh my God, my idea was actually accepted. Like, we could actually work on this. Or is it, well, screw it, I'm not going to bring up, no matter how good I think this idea is, it's just going to get shut down, so I'm not going to eat it.
Right.
When did they do the study?
I have, again, I don't even know if it was Marcus, if it was Luptak. I just remember that, and the psychological safety literally is what it is they brought up, and it was that. It's, do you feel like you can bring up an idea to your higher-ups or to your management or your company and feel like it's actually receptive?
And they're saying that's correlated with the most successful companies?
Like being happy with where you're working at.
Oh,
having like a healthy workplace.
I'm pretty sure it was Google. And because again, some of these places are so big they can study their own organizations. Right?
We don't outsource for these things.
And they wanted to look at tenure and team and employee satisfaction, and a lot of it came back to that point. And I think that is unfortunately just terribly misunderstood. And I think right now there's a lot too many companies having a reckoning with that kind of thing. This command and control, top down, do as I say, that's last century, and we're 21 plus years now into this century, and companies are just figuring this out, but it's just a relic. And that's how efficiently, right, it ran for 100 years, but it's not going to run that way from now on. Right. The best companies aren't. So I think a lot of companies right now are just going through that kind of reckoning. And you talk about like purpose. I don't know if you guys get into that, but employees want to understand, what is the purpose of this organization? Like, what am I joining, right? And you ever heard the bricklayer parable?
Explain it.
Okay. Yeah. So there were the 3 bricklayers, right, in this construction area. And this man came in and he asked each 3 of them what they were doing. So the first one says, well, I'm laying brick, Okay. The second one says, well, I'm building this wall. The third one gets asked the same question, backs up. He's like, can you see it? We're building a cathedral.
Yeah.
All 3 were laying brick.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? Who's probably happier?
That's powerful.
Maybe more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But at minimum is probably a more fulfilled human.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I think, there's a lot of whitewashing with this purpose-driven stuff with businesses right today. Like not every business is, fixing or changing the world, but they are having a piece of it. It's like just dial it down to really what you're doing at a broader scale, and you're going to have such different outcomes, right? Because if you just want to teach the person to push paper more efficiently, you'll find somebody there, but you'll never find that person that'll innovate to get beyond whatever that activity is, and your turnover will be high.
That's right.
And, on and on and on.
That's right.
So
that's interesting. I like that parable.
I like that story.
I like that parable. We're back here after some short technical difficulties.
So much hot air.
Yeah. It's funny. That door literally did cool it down a couple degrees. I don't know if you guys felt that, but
not sweating anymore.
Jason, I got to ask you. You told us early on in this podcast that now you were getting an email walking in here from a sizable company in Australia that you guys are potentially going to work with. You started in a dorm room in '99. What got you to there? And if it's mainly referral based, how the hell did you get to somebody's ear in Australia?
I pinch myself a lot. I think, and doubly, and I just talked to my team this morning with our annual all-team meeting we have every January. We have monthly meetings, but, we always do a bigger one in January. We have some of the most humblest people, and it's good until it's not. Like, they don't think anything of some of these big things that they're doing. So just in 21, we worked, we were part of the NFL draft team. We worked on some aspects of that. We worked with USA Track and Field on the Olympics, the trials in the Olympics. And then we've been doing some behind-the-scenes work getting ready for the NBA All-Star Game. And I was like, guys, wake up. This is one of those. One of those would have been made the whole year.
Yeah.
But we get involved in so many things like that. They're just like, yeah, cool. It just worked, right? Next project, right? Next client. And we have to celebrate those things more. So management and I are trying to make sure we're shining a light harder and brighter on these things we have to celebrate. Because I think that's an important part of culture is culture can be defined as many things, but I think one component of it is you can be measured by what you celebrate as an organization. So we try to celebrate more of those special opportunities. We practice what we preach, right? We market ourselves. A lot of agencies don't actually do what they sell. They call themselves the cobbler's children. Like they're running around without shoes on. Like that's dumb. You literally have the shoe factory, inside your place. Put some shoes on. So we have just marketed ourselves. We're a big believer in content marketing, email marketing, social, and our website many, many years before maybe it became in vogue. And then we did it consistently, right? There was always money to do it. There was always time. Sometimes we get pushed back to the back of the line, but we always still did it. And those things build, right? They're cumulative. It's a marathon in our industry. And I think we've just run it very steadily. And because of the service and the great work and building that trust through education and innovation, that word traveled. And, we're not hunting for work overseas, but people are taking us to those places. And then once you took care of the guy in Australia, you don't know who he knows on the other side of Australia or New Zealand or whatever. And that's not the goal, but it's just funny how things happen because of that. And we look at everything. We look at every opportunity. And not everyone's a fit. We push a lot away. But there's a lot you're saying, maybe if we just sat this way and looked at it, right, be better. Yeah. Because a lot of places, we just had one come in from, actually this was a European one, where it was an agency friend of ours made a referral. He was out of New York, and he had a client in the UK. The client had just left and joined an Israeli firm. And it's like, sometimes, again, I pinch myself. I can't make this up. But it all came through these connections. And he's like, I'm in a real tough spot. I referred him to another agency. The other agency, you know, was 1 week in and said, you guys, no, this isn't going to work, and just quit. I'm like, well, that's a red flag on many stops, you know, for the agency or for the client. So we looked at it. We asked a bunch of different questions. We're like, yeah, we could do it that way, but we were going to do it this way. I'm like, well, it's not going to work that way, and that's probably why the other agency quit. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, interesting. So I said, if you want to do it this way, we'll jump in. But if you want to do it that way, we're probably not the right fit. They're like, well, then let's do it your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. But just having that conversation is what allowed you guys to be eyes on it.
Absolutely.
That's interesting, man. And it has come a long way. And obviously there's, you know, we talk a lot about like the 6 degrees of separation where like you're connected to, you know, everybody through 6 degrees of separation. So and obviously you're making those connections because, again, you have an Israeli client, one in Australia. Who knows where at the end of this year, who it is you're working with. Absolutely. It might even be in those same areas, but the companies of those areas, you know what I'm saying? That could be like large industry sectors at that point or whoever it is. I mean, that's amazing.
And that's amazing. I think social media a lot has to do with that because you can reach just a large audience with such little effort nowadays, which it's such good and bad things. Obviously, there's going to end up being, you know, more comparison when it comes to material things and stuff or even experiences. But in business, you can reach such a large audience, whether you're product-based or service-based. And again, who's to say like you do a really good job for someone like an online lead or something, someone from social media, and then again, hey, you did such a good job for me, I'm going to refer you to my cousin or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it works just like that, right? Everyone's got a fence, we say, and they all reach over it to tell their neighbor something. Yeah. Right? They're going to tell a good story or a bad story about you. Yeah. And then you never know where that discussion goes.
That's right.
So what do we see Thundertech doing in 2022?
Oh gosh, it's already going to be a big year. There's a lot of big work signed. We do one of our categories, industry categories, we do a lot in is the destination field. So the destinations were hurt, you know, really bad the last 2 years.
Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah, right. Shocking news, but. Yeah, a lot of them are doubling down or changing things and calling us to retool, to look at things differently and starting to rebuild budgets after, you know, some had pretty decent, seasons in 21. So that sector is kind of ramping up. And then you got a lot of the other stories I've just been telling, you know, around the digitization and the modernization, frankly, of what they do, where it's starting to click more. And yeah, we'll see. It's there's a lot of work booked. We're going to be hiring. We already know that. But again, we try to do it at a sustained rate. I don't need to double overnight. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't need to hit a number to prove anything to anybody but ourselves. So we look at sustainable, healthy growth, and that has served us well now 20 years. So 22 is we said, you know, it's going to be like 21, but with probably a little extra hot sauce.
Yeah.
You may not know where it's at in the meal, but I can guarantee something's going to be spicy in there, right?
So you're pretty ecstatic about this year.
Yeah, because I think we've got 2 years under our belt. First year, the world was ending, right, in 20. Second year, vaccines and people started coming out of their caves and all these other things. We started figuring out how we can work with this pandemic. We also saw behaviors change, right? Acceleration of e-commerce and a lot of those things. Nothing was new. It just accelerated. Mm-hmm. So in 22, we're seeing, all right, your baseline is probably a little more predictable. More organizations of any size in any field understand change is going to happen. Like certainty, you know, uncertainty is very certain right now. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to try to predict the future, you think exactly what's going to happen this year, you're screwed, right? Who knows when there's another variant? Who knows when there's shutdowns? Who knows with supply chain problems? Who knows when blah, 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 blah. And I think there's a lot of companies that either are waiting for things to go back to normal. Those are not the ones I want to hang out with. Mm-hmm. Or there's others that are trying to figure out, let's invent the future. Mm-hmm. You know, we just had 2 years of a warm-up to really get conditioned to think differently. Let's go.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about the metamorphosis of Thundertech over the last 2 years. And obviously it sounds like things are looking really good for the future in 22. But can you talk a little bit about that metamorphosis? Like how How were you challenged, and how did you guys, go through with that?
So, I think, there's certain services or things that evolved just as the need evolved. But at least I'll start here, if that's of interest, on the internal side, how we run our agency. So part of our culture, which I love your office. I need to take more photos on the way out.
Please do.
And again, this is why I think, it's awesome you guys are doing this podcast, was we need more lights on cool people, cool industries, because the media just doesn't, the media is changing. It has changed. And they can't talk about enough of these places because they don't have the people, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the curiosity, whatever their excuses are. So, hey, kudos to there. But
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's legit. But given our workforce, we have folks that prefer to come in 5 days a week. That's a small number. We have folks that I may never see again in my life, and that's what they want. So we have to work in that blended reality. So we have come out, we are a remote first, even though we have offices. The offices are open now, but we have a remote first, flexible work hour, work from anywhere. We had a guy, head of multimedia, which was probably the toughest service to do, but he spent a month and a half in Colombia.
No.
Medellin, yeah.
Oh, great. That's crazy.
And man, he just didn't miss a beat. Now, his background looked like a screensaver because it was the mountains. It was beautiful. We're like, man, if Matt can do it, we can figure this out, right? Because you can go to spring break and work a day or two on the bookends and from Florida with your kids. Like, okay, that was easy. We had done that over the years. To be immersed in it. But to go on a different continent, and he had a team. It was a manager. Didn't miss a beat, right? So that work from anywhere is real. We tested it. We ran to that. We call it a human-friendly environment. So we have always believed in a lot of these values, like human-friendly and family first. It's easy to talk about. We needed to actually write out what that meant and put the policies in place. So we had some of them, but we're saying, no, this is actually what it means. We're not going to change the color of our logo during Pride Month and say, great, we're pro-Pride. No, that's fine for some companies. We're like, bullshit. Judge us by our policies. Judge us by our hiring. Judge us by how folks are treated as humans. I like that. And that's been a big shift. Big shift.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed the physical camaraderie, the cultural, absolutely so much energy. Right. We said we have to be able to find ways to do this smarter and differently. And we do get together. We get together for collaboration. We get together for some camaraderie. Certain events just have no business. They were happy hours. They were events, whatever. And if you could come, great. If you didn't, fine. But it also opened up our hiring pool. So we've got folks now living much further away than they ever did, and hiring out of state, and all of that kind of stuff has now opened up all these possibilities for us. So that's the kind of stuff that gets me out of bed. 'Cause it's like, wow, that is different. Yeah. That is scary sometimes. Yeah. But it's a challenge. I want to solve it.
Yeah, but think about it. Your employee over in Colombia, he goes on Friday after he clocks out, he goes to a happy hour down at a pub or a bar or whatever it is over there, right? And he's talking to somebody about his work. And who knows how the word of mouth spreads over there.
You never know.
People, even think about that. Your own employees kind of giving out the own marketing, wherever it is they're at in the country or in the world.
Well, so very specifically, he came back with a different point of view on offshoring. So when you use a freelancer that doesn't live in America, there's still negativity around that. And he saw through folks he had met at the cafes, the internet cafes, and that these folks were making more working for American firms than they were for their own firms in their own country. So yes, American firms were paying less, but they're paying these other humans very well.
Very well, comparatively speaking.
Yes. And again, that's not our model to just offshore everything. But I think because of him, there's a better appreciation that you can still take care. This isn't just cheap labor. It's actually very well-paid labor, just in a cheaper market. And just it throws another option on the table for people.
I think it's quality of life. Your quality of life increases, which I think in turn your quality of work increases. And that may be just me, just because I know when I come back from vacation, I'm rejuvenated and I have more energy now that I've you just put business away for a little bit. I feel way more energized to go and attack something than when I was just working, straight on 8 months, no days off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I would imagine, hey, your guy in Colombia, if he's able to go ahead and take that month and a half in Colombia and just, hey, on Friday he's hiking. Or Saturday, he's hiking in the mountains and stuff. Like, that's got to be really freaking fun.
But I think to your guys' workspace, right? Yeah. Like, this is not the ordinary workspace.
It's not, no.
Anywhere. But it's part of who you are, and it's probably part of, just that workplace balance, and it creates camaraderie, and it sure beats looking at beige cubicles, right? So, like, that's cool, but that's not for everybody either. Mm-hmm. So, like, you guys have drawn a line saying this is us, and we're going to wear it really loud and proud. And if it's not for you, then no problem. We each are going to save each other a lot of headache.
That's right.
But that's part, and I think more businesses and organizations just need to figure that out, right? Just don't throw desks in and walls up and throw people at it. Decide who you are as a group. You're going to find better people.
Yeah, and Christmas lights, no overhead lights. If you look at it, there's no overhead lights on it.
How many Christmas lights are there?
Even in our kitchen, there's no overhead lights. It's all string lights.
You save a ton of money, though.
Yeah, he cut the electricity bill in half.
Because the LEDs?
Because of all of the lamps. It's all lamps
These are
and
more
Christmas
expensive.
lights.
These are way more expensive to keep on and for an 8-hour workday than it is to keep these lights on.
Yeah, he literally cut it in half. Ironic, because everybody comes in, they're like, oh my God, the electric bill. It's like, no, he literally actually, he cut it in half. So I like to always go into something kind of towards the end that's a little bit unrelated to business, related, but more so kind of taking, the foot off the gas with necessarily just driving or with just driving business in general. Marriage of over 20 years, you said,
Almost,
right?
Yeah.
Almost?
I think this year will be 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 kids.
Yep.
You're a human as well. What
most of the time.
What about your life or your hobbies or your extracurriculars allow you the opportunity to feel like you have some sense of balance in your life, you have fulfillment, and also it allows you, kind of like what Chris said, you go and sit on the beach for a week and come back feeling refreshed. Is it waking up and going to the gym? Is it every Tuesday and Thursday, from 5 o'clock until I go to bed, I spend time with my kids. I have a date night with my wife every week. What is that for you?
Wow, all the above. I think because I started the business the way we did and at a young age, I've thought more about these things maybe than the average bear and watched a lot of business owners too. And first, I think the term you use, balance, is so misconstrued, right? I think everybody individually has to define what balance means for them. Because there's folks that say, well, it's 50-50 or it's whatever. It's 8 to 5 is only work, and then the rest of, it's my personal time.
Sure.
Like, that's your decision, right? You got to define what that means for you. And I think that also changes throughout your life, right? Different seasons just demand different things of you and maybe where your interests lie. I've looked at it as a blending, right? That, I can cut out of work early, go do a great podcast with you guys, meet a buddy down the street for a beer later, go home, spend time with my kids, help my wife make dinner, put my kids to bed, and then jump on and maybe do an hour worth of email. But that's my choice, not because I have to.
Right.
But that's where there's this blending for me. So long answer to your short question, but
I like it.
I still think you gotta break your life up into these manageable segments. Is a spiritual nature important to you? It is in our family. Health, you mentioned fitness, right? I think that's where we first met, through our connection with sports. So ever from high school and college was always involved in sports. So I'm not putting on a helmet anymore, thank God, but working out and running and all that is very, very important to me because that's, for obvious reasons. So I still dedicate a portion there. Spending time with my kids, right? Making sure I'm there, present. I don't want to miss their recitals and their games or whatever else. Now, I'm going to work probably in the evening when I have to go to those, but that's fine. That's part of my trade-off, be able to do that. And that I also demand of our team members. Don't ever miss something for your family because I know, especially in this flexible environment, more flexible today than it's ever been, make up the time whenever. Time shift it, right? but don't miss the family thing, because once you missed it, it's gone. And at the end of the day, that's all you got is your family and your health.
That's great.
Right? So,
great.
yeah, I break those things up into those compartments.
I like it.
My last question is, and I feel like I have so much more to ask you, but we have an allotted time too.
Yeah. Also, before the cameras
Burn up? Yeah.
spontaneously combust.
We can move this to a happy hour.
We could, I mean, winking lizards down the street.
That's
here.
right.
Go.
But my question's always the same at the end here, Jason, is you have the recent graduate, right, from college, and
John Carroll.
and well, sure, we'll say John Carroll. They're about to take the W-2 job, but they really want to start their business. They're on the fence. They know that, hey, I can live a comfortable life doing the W-2, or they could go balls to the wall with the 1099 and go that path, and that's something they're passionate about. What's your advice in business to that individual? What are you telling them?
Yeah. Do it. Right? I mean, it's simple.
Yeah.
You got so much less to risk at a young age. You know, people have asked me, would I do what I'm doing now if I started at 30 or at 40? I'd love to tell you yes, but I know how much tougher it would have been. And were there absolute downsides to starting something young? Of course. But frankly, I didn't know until later. So there's that healthy naivete that comes along with youth saying, why not? What if? How about? That you lose over time, right? Because the world has just kind of shown you a different way. They've worn you down. And yeah, if not when you're young, when? It is so much more difficult to do it later. So try it. And you got such little to lose, you know, and such actually, I think, more to gain because you have your energy, right? You have a very open mind. You have a willingness to listen and learn, and just there's so much to do, to be gained, especially the younger you are.
It's great stuff.
There's a price to pay at some point. It's either you pay it when you're young and it's the price to build something amazing, or it's the price when you're 40 years old and say, damn, I'm kicking myself in the ass wishing I would have started it. So.
No, well said.
Yeah.
We went hard when we were young,
Yeah.
and we didn't know it because we had the energy, right? And we had the naivete, not the different, and we didn't have all the trappings of the great American family life. You know, I didn't have kids yet. You know, we didn't have a mortgage in the early days. All of that. So we just went after it, and I mean, there's some epic stories of what we did with team members that, you know, really OSHA would love to talk to me more about. But, you know, it's like we just did it because that was fun and that was how it is. And those are great cultures to build in early days. So you kind of blend it and, you know, leave all the reservations to the side.
It's amazing. Well, listen, it's been an awesome hour. I think we're pretty much at right now. You've built one hell of a model in your industry and with your company, and it's been nothing but fun. And like you kind of mentioned there, I would love to take it up on a happy hour. We could continue on, especially Chris and I can get lost in conversation, talking business and mindset, motivation for hours. But
hey, everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Elevate Cleveland podcast. Dominic, wrap it up for us.
As Chris stated at the beginning of this podcast, we are licensed loan originators for the best mortgage company in the land. That is Liberty Home Mortgage. Guys, if you or anybody you know is looking to purchase or refinance a home, doesn't matter if you've done this 1, 10, or 100 times, call us, email us. The email is in the description below. Reach out to that email. In the subject line, put looking to purchase / refinance a home, whatever it is your goal is. Chris and I will reach out to you within 24 hours, and we look forward to helping you with whatever it is your specific home goal is. Thank you. But it's been great. We have episode 8. By the time our viewers are hearing this, it is Friday, so happy Friday to all. We hope you have a great weekend. Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, not at all.
Awesome.
Great stuff, Jason. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.